So welcome to this video battle report. I'm joined here by Dave, and we're going to be replaying or talking you through a battle which we played on Tabletop Simulator using a couple of armies from our recent podcast on the two protagonists in the 100 Years' War. Dave, with your Gallic charm, you were leading the French, and I was actually using a list, one that Richard had put together for the English as well. So before we kick off and start the video for the battle and talk everybody through it, I think it's probably worth having a quick look at the list, because just to remind everybody what it was. And I think yours might have been slightly tweaked anyway after the podcast. So yours was 100 Years' War French in 1380 with an initiative of 1 and a fairly tiny 19 units. But Dave, if you just want to talk us through the 3 core and how you put them together and what you were hoping to do with them.
Well, I wanted to not use an entirely mounted heavy knight impetuous elite army, make it a bit more interesting, using a lot of foot knights. 1 brilliant general, 2 ordinary who are both included, because I'm trying to get the number of units up.
Combat power, yeah, as well, yeah.
I only managed to get 19, but yeah, that's difficult with this list, full stop. Even if you've got the mounted knights, they're more expensive. And the interesting thing I wanted to do was use some crossbowmen with pavese, elite. Knowing your army's going to have longbowmen who are elite, I want to try and have something to try and match them and fight with them. Yeah, that was it. And putting a couple of elite bidets in there too, because they can survive the longbowmen's fire for longer.
Shelling from the longbow, absolutely.
Exactly. You know, I'm hoping, in some ways, I'm hoping to get, you know, I can imagine you're going to use a lot of terrain, so I'm trying to use the experiment is to try and use foot knights in terrain, masked by the elite bidets to get them into the terrain and close to the combat, and match up the shooting with some elite crossbow.
And I think all of us have been playing a bit more with crossbow pavese. It's a kind of a more interesting troop type. It's one of those 1-point upgrades that sometimes you think, oh, but actually, if you can organise the shooting, I'm starting to become quite a big fan of pavese.
Yeah, I agree. It's something I don't think everybody. I mean, about the only army I've ever really looked at it in the past was using the Alexandrian army, where you've got, in a very, very late period Alexandrian, you get some Persian guards who've got a pavese and are elite. They're quite handy. But yeah, it's something I've completely overlooked and not bothered with, thinking I need the points somewhere else, which I probably did in this case. But...
It's probably tricky. So you'd got a 9, which was 6 foot knights, 2 elite, 4 ordinary, a pair of crossbowmen, 1 elite with pavese, 1 mediocre, and a heavy cavalry impact to do that kind of pokey stuff, to catch people who don't want to fight the others. Then you've got 2 5s, which were a couple of foot knights and that same crossbowman combo and a light infantry javelin, and then a mounted knight command of 3 mounted, and then 2 screening light infantry crossbow, and 1 each of light infantry crossbow, light infantry javelin for your 19 in this. So yeah, a pretty solid army. 3 of the commands do what they say on the tin, don't they? And that's a lot of foot knights to face up against anything with.
And Lightfoot's elites to try and get myself to the combat before I get shot.
This means war.
So this was the list I was fielding, 100 Years' War English, again 1340. This was one of Richard's. I'd obviously talked about it on the podcast, but not really thought about putting it on table. So this was a 9, a 5, and an 8, so a little bit bigger than yours. And excuse me, I'll edit that out. And then these are all kind of mixed commands, really. You've got the first big command of 9 with an ordinary included general. It's got an elite foot knight. Richard, with this list, had gone for the halberdiers as spearmen to kind of create more of an anti-mounted knight issue, which with your army having so many foot knights didn't look particularly good when I started putting them on table. So I had a couple of heavy spearmen, 2 longbowmen elite, no stakes, a crossbow as well to bump up that shooting a bit more, because the English archers are still expensive, a medium cavalry impact hobilar, a crap medium swordsman, and a light artillery javelin, on the basis that that's better in terrain against an opponent who can't put anything in terrain. The second command was a foot knight, 2 spearmen, and 2 longbowmen, which is a dinky little thing, actually. I didn't quite know whether it would work, but it looked interesting once it was sat out in front of me. And then the final command was, again, an allied general who was the best general in the army. He was competent. He was medieval German. And 3 heavy knight impact, because I don't think the English itself gets particularly good knights. So 3 heavy knight impact, a mounted crossbow, which is that extra width or bit of shooting, or really coming out from behind them and providing an overlap. Then 2 crossbowmen, 1 ordinary, 1 mediocre. No money for or no points for the Pavis there. And then a couple more spearmen. So I'm going to be sat here in this game with 6 heavy spearmen in this army, facing up against an army that's pretty heavy on the foot knights. But let's move on and have a look at the actual video of the game.
This means war.
So look, these are the armies, and this is the terrain. My English army's on the near side of the table. It's me recording the video, and your French is over on the other side. So I guess first up, Dave, what I was pretty chuffed with this terrain, which I guess means you weren't.
I thought it was pretty disastrous, the terrain.
Yep.
I thought, essentially that field in the middle of the table is going to be a problem. But then that's why I've used this version of the army with the foot knights, because I'm thinking the foot knights, all right, they're 1 down in terrain, but they're not, they can easily kill bowmen in terrain. So I've put my small knight foot command in the center of the table with crossbowmen to try and, I think I'm going to have to fight it out in that field. And then I've put the bulk of my army with the brilliant general to my right. And I'm thinking my knight squadron is going to face a bit of difficulty with longbowmen. So I've put my light foot out front to slow you down. I've actually deployed my knights slightly back, so if they move once, they move up behind the light foot, because they're impetuous, they're difficult to move short.
Yeah.
But I'm worrying about the knights already.
It was interesting for me, because I was putting this list on table having not really thought it through before I'd done it. And I guess I kind of deployed it. The big command with the 2 longbowmen and the crossbow and the mediocre sword, that obviously went down the middle, through that field, through that bow motorway. And then it was kind of, what do I do with the rest of the heavier foot that go with it? Do I put them left or right? But with that congestion over to my left between the field and the terrain on the left hand side, I just thought which command did I need to stretch out onto that open space on the right? I thought, actually, I probably need the foot, and I want to get 4 spearmen together. So my heavy foot sort of plonked on the right-hand side of the field from that central command. And then I extended that with the second command in the army list, the other English command. So what you see there is 2 foot knights and 4 heavy spearmen, then with the 2 longbowmen on the flank. And I thought, that's a big enough, wide enough block with a lot of spearmen in it that maybe that is difficult for mounted knights to come in, and those longbowmen can come and ping on the other side. And then the bit on the other flank, I wasn't entirely sure what was going to happen there, but it's a gap that just about fits the 3 impact knights and the spearmen, and not much else. So I thought, even if you've got a lot of knights coming forward potentially, I should be able to push up into that field and kind of enfilade them. And I had actually dropped a couple of crossbowmen into that green square up on my left that was an ambush, which is pretty unusual for me. I'm normally drop an ambush marker in and then don't put anything in it as a bluff. So I sort of slightly surprised myself by thinking this is probably an opportunity for a proper ambush. And I was quite pleased when you didn't have much sort of mobile mounted stuff over on that on your right wing to stop them if they came out. So I was sort of thinking those two crossbowmen might be able to peel a couple off of those foot knights and sort of neutralize them whilst I try and gang up on the rest of the table. But so yeah, I was pretty chuffed after this, and I was actually pleasantly surprised how sensible the army felt. More sensible on the table than it did on the list when it was deployed. But that's the deployment. Let's move on and press the button and start the game.
This means war.
Yeah, so and this is a quick scan through of the two armies, see what we've got facing there, all these different types of troops. But so you're starting your move. What are you thinking about this ambush marker there and your heavy foot? What are you thinking? There's something there, or
I'm totally ignoring the ambush marker. To be honest, my cavalry coming round is there, thinking if I get the opportunity, I might try and whiz through the woods. Foolishly, I've just thought, no, there is no ambush there. To be honest, I'm foolishly concentrating on that field in the middle of the table and feeling very worried about it. Normally, I'd put the crossbowmen on the outside. I've moved the knights up, as I said, to the light foot because I planned that. So I'm very worried about my left-hand side and your massed troops.
yeah,
yeah. I'm sitting there thinking, God, I'm outnumbered here. But I'm thinking what I've got to do is get through the Germans. And to be honest, I've used the foot knights because I want to have an experiment. I've used foot knights against mounted knights before and it's gone horribly wrong. So I want to give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah. And, I'm sat here thinking, well, these, knights that I've got there are pretty good. They can have a punt. But these two surprise crossbowmen who jump out of there, which, I don't blame you because, as I said, I never do ambushes. And to find that they're only facing one heavy cavalryman and they can probably skulk back into the woods and the rest of it is pretty good. So the knights kind of shoot over to hit the end, or try and hit the end of your foot knights, the same as I'm putting pressure on with the crossbowmen. And then those spearmen are kind of a bit, what do I do with them? So I just shove them towards the middle. And then on this side, where I was thinking I might hold back, what I actually did was think, well, I'll go forwards. There's not much there really. Shove the infantry, start some shooting, and all of a sudden I've got 3 shooters here pinging at your crossbow unit. So you can see sort of where the pressure's going to be. It's going to be, for me, over on that left end of your heavy foot line, sort of in the middle. I'm happy to go for shooting, and then this thing that I'm holding back on my right is a case of actually just get forward as quick as you can. And this is where the ordinary generals with it start to struggle. They do run a little bit out of points. So looks like we've had an exchange of shooting and we've had some hit points come in on each of them, and you're now looking at my knights lurching forwards and me occupying that rough terrain. So is this has shoved the knights in?
Well, I'm worried about your right hand side. I'm hoping, I'm thinking my knights are going to run off behind my line, which is something I quite often do, my mounted impetuous knights. I'm thinking, right, let's find out how what is essentially 5 foot knights, 6 foot knights are going to stand up against 3 mounted knights. That knight on the end has had to go and face off towards your crossbowman. But I am sitting there thinking, now I've discovered your guy on the end is only a medium cavalryman. I'm thinking, a mounted crossbowman.
Crossbow.
I'm thinking my damaged cavalry impact will be able to shoot through that gap, I'm hoping, and try and get round the flanks or fight off with them. But I've taken 2 shots in the process, which is not a good result.
Yes, I was pinging away at that cavalry quite effectively, wasn't it? 2 crossbowmen does start to put quite a lot of damage on them. But so we've got one of these situations over here when both of us are sending our troops forward because we think this is a good matchup. Because I'm quite happy about my knights, and you're quite happy about testing them with that big lump of infantry. So I think this is where we started trying to do clever stuff. This is sort of a slide across and try and pin to try and see if I can get past this this guy, because I don't want to fight him with a crossbow, and this is kind of a sort of slide move wheel. Let's have another go at that cavalryman, because if he disappears, clearly I'm sort of at risk. But if I can get rid of that cavalry, suddenly my heavy cavalry and those 2 crossbowmen have got that lone knight on toast, and I could be kind of running around the back of your army pretty quickly. So here my longbow I think had taken 2 hits as well, so I threw up some light foot to cover it. And then these guys are just sort of we're not really fighting anything, let's just rush forwards. This should be in fact they're almost getting to that stage which thinking they've got to get into combat, otherwise I'm going to be wasting 8 units out of my army there. But so that was a little whizzy close-up of the longbowmen shooting through the field, and there's quite a few markers starting to come in here, and your infantry are starting to think about having a go into that field, aren't they?
Well, I'm thinking I've got four bowmen against your 3 bowmen in the field, and my 2 are elite. So I'm thinking I want to see how that shooting contest goes, or even though you're longer. But if not, I'm hoping one of my crossbowmen can whiz down the side and threaten the flanks of your knights if necessary. But
that's a good call actually. I'd not even spotted that. My attention was really zoomed in on them focusing on that bit of rough terrain. So actually, there you go. So you threw yourself into that crossbow guy and threw themselves into those as well. And I'm kind of thinking, I'm thinking, sod it, let's stay there. You're 2 hits down, but I'd not really seen the overlap coming. I think you kind of got me on that one, so it became a lot worse than I thought. But then again, you're impact, you're injured. It's only 1 overlap. It's a difference of 1, and if I win, it's a huge opportunity. So this is you doing your Dave thing of your cavalry, your mounted tiny wing, whizzing out of the way and trying to neutralise all of those infantry of mine just through space and time. And then
I'm trying to make another line between the field and my camp to try. I'm trying to trade space and time, and try to hope, forlorn effort to try and break through that field. I'm realising my foot knights aren't going to get to do the job. It's going to have to be down to the bowmen. I'm thinking now that I can charge your damaged bowmen at some point. I'm allowed to charge that, and I'm also thinking if I get the picks, there's a gap wide enough for the other 2 bowmen to come through and face that, but then you've got your spear behind the line as well.
Yeah, the spear are quite some way away though, aren't they? And those knights are about to get involved and stuck into combat. So yeah, I suppose suddenly your 2 foot knights in the middle have got quite a lot to do if they're going to attack the longbowmen. Had you sort of given up on attacking the longbowmen then, now that your knights are no longer threatening my foot? Yeah. So it looks like I did kill off that cavalryman, and then straight away, obviously, my next turn into the foot knight in the flank, and now this has got to be over quickly. There's some choices there about what to do. Do I leave the cavalry as an overlap? But no, I just want to blow that foot knight away on the end, and then have 3 units to kind of rush into the back of your line of heavy infantry that my knights are still engaged with, and here I'm suddenly thinking, I've got loads of troops. Your 3 knights there aren't going to do anything against those. I've got 8. You've only got 3, so all of a sudden this looks quite clever. There's a bit of sort of shenanigans about how are we going to get into the foot knights and things like that, and one of us will be in the field and one won't. But here I ended up with the bit of discretion being the better part of valor, and just pull the injured longbowman out. My Siloi there, my light infantry is injured. That's nearly dead. It's got crossbows with Pavises shooting. So here come the terrible, poor quality, mediocre brigand swordsmen to potentially put themselves in the front line. But I'm kind of getting into that vibe of this is sort of going all right, and I've got more I've got more bases than you, so I can probably afford to fritter a few away or put some out just to drag your attrition level down faster than mine. And so here's the combat with the knights, which this was a game where that new rule about armor sort of came into its own, didn't it? But with you technically not having any armor in the first round that we dug out in the podcast on the other week, the main podcast. So these knights, that's a good result. Two double hits and no injuries on my side. So suddenly that flank is looking like it's only going to be a matter of moments, isn't it? Really,
it's looking like toast on that side, which is completely after. I think I've just ended up concentrating too much on the field. and messed it up, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, I think the longbowmen are, they do 3 bowmen or 2 longbowmen and a crossbowman throw out an awful lot of punishment. It's just a big block, and in a field they're pretty safe. So, here you committed your general against mine, which
Yeah, I thought I need to blow away, and also that means my foot knight is past your flank. I'm still just lacking the pips to get those crossbowmen into the game.
yeah, they were a bit becalmed.
I was
Because I was actually, so I was sort of quite happy to see your general going to combat, because my troops are just sort of happy-ish to sit there, but I'm thinking that's suddenly made it a lot harder for you to start commanding those crossbow, and they've got quite a lot to do. But yeah,
those crossbow then have come across to be a reserve and trying to ping away at
plug that gap. Yeah, and then that foot knight over on my left, you're right, is still hanging on, isn't he? Despite being hit. In fact, he's rallied. Yeah. He's rallied up to 1 hit.
I moved my brilliant general to him to try and rally him, because I thought if I don't hold that flank to some degree, I'm in big trouble.
And now
mounted knights has gone completely wrong.
Yeah, no, that was tricky. And I'm now starting to get slightly irritated that foot knight is still there, because in my mind I've got, I should already have 3 spare units just running into the back of your knights, and I haven't. And I'm like going, damn, should I have left the cavalry as an overlap and concentrated on the knights or something like that? But it just, he was just proper resilient, wasn't he, until he took a couple more hits there.
Like, even surrounded is a very, very powerful, piece, especially if he's fighting a crossbowman, where I've beaten.
And was that your? I think that was your foot knight general went down, wasn't it, as well? At that stage, that's where the extra hit came from.
That was a really bad one. Now I'm really in trouble.
Yeah, that's starting to be that point in the game which you think, this just isn't mine, I imagine. Yeah. But
my mounted knight at the back has turned around, use the pit pad to turn around and face your bowman. I'm thinking there's some attacks and fights there. I can maybe hold that wing a bit.
Yeah, and I've had to chuck the spearmen up into that. I've had to chuck those spearmen up into a slightly bad position to protect the flank of the knights, so that it just buys them a bit more time to go in and do that. But again, it's getting into that trading time for units, isn't it? And then the mediocre swordsmen go in against your injured bowman, whatever that's all about. And suddenly
I've got an overlap.
Hey, it's all good. It's all fantastic. Something's happening here. So the foot knights are still fighting away. Yeah, that one that had the generals now disappeared.
Come out from behind your knights to stop me flanking your knights.
Yep, absolutely. And then the mediocre brigands look like they've knocked a hole in your crossbowmen as well in the centre there.
Killed off the elite guys, which is not a good trade, I must admit. No.
And that guy's still hanging on. Is he still hanging on over there?
Yeah, I'm trying to rally him with the pips, but he's
dear. It's just one life left. Yeah. And I suppose it's that weird thing, isn't it? Because I'm thinking this game's going really well. You're up to that's 16 losses there on the little ticker, and I'm on 8. But it could have been so much more if that foot knight had not done the heroics. But then again, if your general falls over on the other side, that's a tricky one. You can't get everything there, I guess. So are you starting to regret your theory of foot knights against mounted knights? Is it? Actually, no. Here they come.
Well, I've got a feeling that foot knights should work. I think the problem is that foot knights are very expensive. You need, like you've done in your army, you need to combine foot knights with cheaper troops, whether it be two-handed weapon guys or spearmen.
Just to get a bit more width, isn't it? Or
get
a range of different factors as well. I think even a couple of spearmen in there would have made it much more difficult for the knights to just have a punt.
100% might have got up from 19 to 21, 22 like you.
Well, then again, now I've lost a couple of knights in this one, and some of yours are still hanging on. So trade-off, you've still got 5 foot knights there on the table, and I've lost a couple of the mounted guys, but it's kind of bought time for attrition all the way across the line, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I guess.
The mounted knights did right. I mean, it's sort of the damage has been done earlier on in the game here, I think. I've lost 2 bases out of 19 to, even though I'm kind of doing well in the combat now, which you should do, it's not going well.
Yeah, you're starting to knock some holes in those, but But I guess this guy, yeah, that guy on the flank is still there, isn't he? He's still hanging on. Oh, no, he's then killed one of my crossbowmen. How outrageous is that?
He kills your crossbowman. The knights all lurch forwards.
Lurch forward and into safety.
To try and get away from your mounted knight.
Yeah. No, it looks tricky. And
I think this is more or less game over when my knight with the brilliant general on my left dies.
Yeah, he turns into that flank, and that's 2 hits, and that's gone. And I think that's and he just he obviously knocks it straight over, turning and charging into the rear of it.
Final round of combat, which went all right. I'm nowhere near your army.
Yeah, this was just suddenly into closing out the end game without accidentally picking up any more hits, really, wasn't it? At this stage, and just seeing what the casualties would be when time finally ticks down on the game. So it was in fact, those mediocre swordsmen are rampaging through the centre there. So it's strange though, your foot knights are still to a degree intact and have to a degree repulsed the knights, but they've not done it kind of quickly enough, if that makes sense.
No, I think I was too intent on trying to see what would happen with foot knights in a field against bowmen. I thought that, but I didn't give you get to that situation. I think your numbers told. As we said before, I think if I just had a bit more filling, a little less expensive troops, then I could have maybe held out a bit longer. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, look, that was that was an interesting post game to watch. We rattled through that fairly quickly. Hopefully, you were able to follow all the action there as well as we put those 2 armies on table. So I guess in another couple of weeks we will work through probably another set of the armies that we've covered in the podcast, play a game of those, and put that up on screen for you to watch and see if there's anything to pick out of it as well.